Hey everyone, welcome back to part 5 of Why Am I Like This? So what you see spread out in front of me is essentially everything I need to put the front end of this Blazer back together. I have all the parts I showed you in the last video that I bought new, plus the refurbed lower control arms and the steering knuckles and all the hardware that has been cleaned up and black oxide coated. And I think that's all that's new or changed since the last video, which has actually been a couple of months ago. Quickly going over what I've done. Some of these parts got dipped in a electrolytic rust removal bath back at my home garage, and then basically just rattle can satin black. And then the bushings and ball joints were replaced, wheel bearings replaced. That's basically it. It sounds really simple, but it's a lot of work, especially these bushings. Oh my God. That is a ton of work. Don't recommend it. If I had to do it all over again, I probably would have worked a little harder to find new lower control arms. I just thought, oh, how hard could it be? Replace the bushings and the ball joints. It can be hard, it turns out. Apparently my press is not as good as the one General Motors used. So, what took so long, you might be wondering? A few things. We had some serious weather ups and downs. We had record lows, and then a couple weeks later we had record highs. So, that's Iowa. Finally, I caught my case of COVID that apparently was like 2 years coming. I don't know how I made it to April of 2022. I had the vaccinations and the boosters and everything, but it finally got me, and it got me good. And it's been a month, and I'm still dealing with the coughing and the sore throat and everything. So it was not just a cold, like some people like to say. I was one of the unfortunate people that got a bad case of it. So I'm still dealing with that. I get worn out really easily. So I would come out here to work, and after about a half hour or an hour, I'd be done, and I'd have to go home. So we'll see what I can do. Here we go.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys. It sound right, boys. It sound right, boys.
So my last step here is removing this Pitman arm. I've never had to do this before, so anybody who has is probably just sitting here laughing at me like, either you idiot, yeah, that sucks, or you idiot, there's a trick to that. I don't know. I've never had to do this before. The nut and washer are off. Now I just gotta get that off. So what I'm attempting to do, first off, I would love to use a puller like this. Clearly that's not gonna work, simply based on the clearance I have here. And clearly a pickle fork like this isn't going to work based on the opening. So what I'm trying to do is I have a threaded rod, kind of zip tied. It goes all the way down. And I'm just whacking on it with a hammer, hoping I can knock it loose. And hoping it will knock loose before I break the radiator or a pulley or an air conditioner line or something. Don't know if it's gonna work, but I don't have any other ideas at this moment. And once that comes loose, then I think the entire tie rod assembly will come out, and then I can just kind of rebuild it on the floor, put it all back in as one unit, and it'll be a lot easier than climbing around under the truck, getting covered in grease and oil. Which, on that note, something is still leaking down here. I sure hope it's not the front main seal. But anyway, that's where I'm at. It's not a lot of fun. I'm just gonna stop my time lapse because I'm just wasting battery making the world's most boring time lapse video. I'll bring you back in a bit. Well, I said I'd bring you right back, and here we are. It's been 1 week. So I got nowhere. I kept banging on that thing, and I finally just kind of got a little shaky and decided I really didn't want to destroy my steering box by just banging on that and destroying a seal or a mount or something. So I got home, went to bed, was laying there, and thought, wait, I actually do have the tool for removing that Pitman arm. So let's remove it. Almost all the way through, so I think I should be able to just split that with a cold chisel, and it should just fall off. Find out together if I'm a genius or an idiot. Yep, I definitely got into the shaft, but I don't think it's going to be a problem. Are you telling me that Pitman arm doesn't come off without loosening up this gearbox anyway? It's gotta come off. This isn't a Ford. It's not that I don't have enough clearance below it, it's that this ridge right here is in the way. They Forded me. I had to loosen the steering box anyway, so if I did that, I maybe could have fit the Pitman arm puller on there to begin with. Okay, all the bolts are out of the steering box. I still probably couldn't have got that puller on there, so I still would have had to do what I did with cutting it off. There it is. I don't know how bad these components are individually, but I ordered them as a set, so we're just gonna replace everything. All I had it apart. I guess you don't need to watch me do that. Bring it back in a bit, or maybe next week, we'll see. All right, just wanted to give you a couple of updates. Here's my pile of parts, still patiently waiting for me to stop being OCD. So here's what the frame looks like before I do anything to it. And as you can see, it's a mixture of grease, rust, and farm store rattle can rubberized undercoating. Here's what it looks like after just a little bit of work. This side is done and ready to put back together. And it's not concourse quality. I'm not going to take this to any car shows and win. But that's mostly just scraping off the undercoating with a putty knife, hitting the rust real quick with a wire brush, and then just priming in satin black. That did not take more than half hour of work, and it looks so much better. Ready to just get the components put back on. So I'm going to do that to the other side. I just wanted to show you the before and after, so you can see how big a difference that makes. Here's my sway bar and my tie rod, cleaned up, sprayed satin black so I can start putting those back on the car. So I'm about to put you on time lapse. I'm going to move my floodlights over here. I'm going to start putting this side back together. I think I'm ready to go. So finally, putting something back on the car. It only took me like 3 months. I guess here we go. So looking at the front suspension of a 53 Chevy, it's kind of incredible how simple it is. Obviously this one's a little bit modified, but that's the whole thing. So anyway, back to the project du jour. I was gonna put the tie rod back together and start putting it in the car, but it's still wet to the touch. So I think this is just gonna have to hang here until the next time I come out, unfortunately. However, this side, other than the brakes and cinching up the torsion bar, this is done. But it came together pretty nice. Here's a before picture, and here it is now. So you can tell, made a big difference appearance-wise, and I definitely know it's gonna make a big difference performance-wise because this thing clunked and creaked and just swerved all over the road, and the bearings made all kinds of noise. And I mean, to me, it was just like comical and just kind of took me back to driving total piles of junk when I was a kid. But I let my wife borrow it a couple times, and she was more just like terrified for herself and then terrified for me, knowing that I was driving it to work every day on the interstate. So I will feel a little bit better driving it to work every day, and she will feel better knowing that I'm not driving a death trap once winter comes. Well, I guess that's going to be it for this video. I really hoped this one was going to end on the note of bringing it down off the jack stands and driving off into the sunset, but you know, paint takes time to dry. So if I'm just going to wait for paint to dry, then it's another week. So I figure get this put up, and then the next video comes out, then it'll be coming down. And it's not going to be just that, because there's one more thing that's going to happen in the next video. I'm not excited about it, but it has to be done. I just ordered and received a heater core. Now this job sucks. Depending who you ask, some people say, hey, it's not that big a deal, but it is a dash out operation, or at the very least a dash tilt operation. The reason I'm doing it is because when I turn on the heater, there is a faint smell of coolant, so I'm pretty sure I have a pinhole leak. That alone probably wouldn't be enough to replace the heater core, considering how much work it is. But this car reeks of mouse piss. Driving it all winter, I think I got kind of used to it, but now just every time I walk by the car and get a whiff of it, I get like PTSD. It is so bad. And when my wife drove it, she thought it was terrible, and she had to like give a ride to one of her kids and one of her kids' friends, and they thought it was terrible. And so I've been all through this car, and I've cleaned it, and I've done some of those like odor bombs that you like release and roll the windows up with the fans running, and I'm sure it's just hanging out next to that heater core inside the dash, because I've seen little trails of mouse turds like leading into the vents, and I'm sure that's where it's hiding. So if I'm gonna get that smell out, I'm gonna have to get inside the dash and clean it out, and I'm sure it's just all crammed into that heater core. So that's the next job. So I suppose the next video is gonna be wrapping this up, getting it down off the jack stands, taking it for a test drive, and tearing the dashboard apart. You get to come along on the ride for that. There will be a part 6. And if I'm feeling really, enthusiastic, masochistic, I'm not sure. Look what I have over here. Yeah, I have a transfer case. If you followed along, you know my transfer case doesn't do the one thing it's supposed to do. I still have no 4-wheel drive. The spare transfer case that came with this truck is the wrong one. This one had a giant crack in it, which I fixed. I filled with fluid, it still does nothing, and I suspect driving around as long as it did with no fluid probably wasn't good for it. I wouldn't be surprised if this thing's trash. I got a really good deal on one that came out of a wrecked car that had been well maintained up to that point and had relatively low miles. I think I paid $40 for the thing, and it's all but like guaranteed to be good as new. So if I get ambitious, I got a good transfer case sitting there. No guarantees though. I might just sell the thing in fold and include a transfer case. Get to that point, but it seems really silly to have a ZR2 winter car that's 2-wheel drive. But we're gonna do one thing at a time. I'm gonna wrap up this video, and we'll see you in the next part, probably in a month or 2. But I got other projects to get to. I can't mess with this thing all winter or all summer. This thing's frying my brain. I don't even know what season it is. See you in the next one.